So here we are again, James. Just you and me this time. Talking about Dark Crystal, Age of Resistance. It's been a long time since you and I have chatted, and it's a long time since we had an episode of whatever I titled it. It's one of the names. I'll post it when we post the episode.
Yeah, Crystal Shard Chinwag.
Something like that. How many times have you seen the show?
Do you know, all the way through, this is really bad. I've seen it once, all the way through.
Really?
However, because I'm always looking for new things to get signed. Like each individual episode, I have seen like hundreds of times now. Like, and in each individual scenes as well. Now that I'm back on my new shift pattern, I'll have more time to watch it properly, like all the way through, because I am well overdue another through.
And you guys with kids, it's a little bit harder to watch something from beginning to end because you got to stop and you got to start and you got work and you got all this stuff going on. So,
especially when you're poddling, just runs in and starts throwing stuff. You can't concentrate.
Yes, you have that little poddling that Brea runs after.
Yeah, for definite. Yeah, it's funny. I was actually laughing. I was talking about scenes. I posted in the group today about when Skekso reveals the darkening to Skekvar, and the first thing that comes to his mind is, "Oh, it's purple." Mm-hmm. Well, I literally just burst out laughing at that because it just seems so anticlimactic. Like, this is like the big reveal, and all you can comment on is the color of it. I just thought that was really funny.
Yeah, well, it just sort of shows you is it Skekva? Skekva's more fundamentalist. He's more of a linear thinker. He's not that much of a in-depth thinker, whereas I think Skekso is a character that is thinking about everything, his empire, how to build it, how to make it stronger, who to partner with, all of the little details, whereas Skekva is just sort of this grunt. So he's not thinking about things too much.
He's more practical, isn't he? Mm-hmm. I mean, like, doesn't that comment to Chamberlain when Chamberlain's like, I drop hints and words here and there, and Skekvar just wants to break people's teeth. Like, he's just like, why don't we just kill them all?
Yeah. I've seen the show. I'm on my 7th viewing, and I'm the type of person where I can't just watch an episode by itself. I can't do it. I can't just like, I want to watch episode 2. It's a whole story, so I have to watch it from beginning to end. However long it takes me. Now, sometimes I can have it playing in the background, but it demands so much of your attention. There's so much going on that I feel like I have to intentionally put it on and sit down and watch it.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I love the fact that you, like, sometimes I'll just take a snapshot and just sit and look at how much is in that shot, because sometimes when you're watching it, so much is like happening in the background that you're just totally even looking at. And it's just sort of like, it can be anything, like a little creature, or like, you take for example, the scene where they're all having dinner again, like the Skeksis, the banquet, just one snapshot. And there's so much on the table, like from tentacles to crustacean to spaghetti. And then there's like, it's just incredible. It's just that you get this real sense that it's like, sense of depth, and it's like layered up. I think one of the other scenes that has that is when Tavra, they like, when Brea's doing the Order of Lesser Service, and Tavra comes to find her, and they hug, and the camera pulls back, and you see all that vegetation, and then you see the Landstrider in the background. It shows how big these sets are as well, which is just amazing. Get lost in them.
Yeah, it's one of those things where every single time I see the show, I pick up the things that I haven't seen before. I see little subtle details. There's even bits of dialogue, like, why didn't I hear this before? Like, what is happening that I didn't hear this dialogue? Or I saw some clip of AOR somewhere, and I'm like, what scene was that from? And so I rewatched it, I'm like, oh, because I'm paying attention to a different part of the same scene,
Yeah. It's like the final battle when on episode 10, and Augur is like resurrected, and there's so many little times that the scroll keeper is making some noise or he's laughing. I just totally didn't notice it. And then like I sat there watching it the other day and I was like, he's literally talking through this entire scene. And like you just don't notice because there's so much going on.
Mm-hmm.
But he's just there like laughing his head off.
That scene with the Skeksis, attacking the Gelfling had to have been a nightmare to choreograph. There's so many moving parts. You have all of the puppeteers with the Gelfling, and then you have the Skeksis, and I would imagine that because they cut back and forth between the Gelflings and the Skeksis, you don't see a ton of them interacting together. So I would imagine they're shooting them separately on some way because there's too much happening.
Yeah, but it's also because all the puppeteers, all of their characters are in that one shot.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got, like, for example, Neil Sterenberg, who does the Scroll Keeper, and Rian. So they film all the Skeksis on one side,
mm-hmm.
and then they get out of that, and then they'll go and film all of the Gelf. So it's literally like, and that's for every single puppeteer. So and then can you imagine like Louis trying to edit this?
Oh my God,
like,
I can't.
It's just like, how do you even go about starting something?
And then
like
you're shooting Brea and Deet and Tavria and Farah on green screen, so they're flying over and dropping bombs, and you've got to comp all that and edit all that in, and so the puppeteers have to be responding to things in the air that they don't see. It's a technical marvel, yes, miracle and nightmare to produce, I would imagine. The more complicated, because you can write that scene, of course, and if it's with humans, you can just say, oh yeah, you do this, you do that, you're going to be on wires here and blah, 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 blah. But these aren't humans, these are puppets. So the Skeksis have to respond to things in the air. Maybe there's like things floating that they can look at that they're seeing, and then of course bombs are going off. How practical are those? Like, it's just it's a job that I wouldn't want.
Yeah, for someone to sit down and say, right, we're filming this today, and then we're going to go over here and film this. I mean, you can understand why when you talk to a lot of the puppeteers, they are like, they absolutely love the project, but they're like absolutely knackered at the end of it.
Yeah,
there's just so much to take in, and then you got all that, and then at the core of it, you've then got to give a performance that is in keeping with your character. So it's just mental. It's absolutely mental.
Yeah,
it's just like you said, a technical marvel and nightmare.
And we're joined by Rob Harper. Everybody, hi, Rob.
Hello.
You made it. How are you?
Keeping you.
Hey, Rob.
How are you doing? You all right?
Mate, you?
Yeah, I'm not bad. I'm okay now. I've just set up an entirely new Skype account. I'm here.
Are you sober, Rob?
I am sober, yeah.
I don't believe it. I don't believe
it. For everyone who doesn't know, Rob is our own private, podling. He's always drunk. He's always happy. He's always getting into trouble.
But this time, I can't blame booze. It's just idiocy. I just couldn't remember my password for Skype.
Oh, yeah.
Or download it.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, Rob. I'm doing well.
Yeah.
It's a nice 18 degrees Celsius day here in Los Angeles. The sun is out and the mountains are gorgeous.
Oh, it sounds very nice.
Very nice. And
the moon is out here.
Yeah. I was going to say, yeah, because you guys are like 8 hours ahead, right? So it's almost 10.
Yeah.
No, you're 9 hours.
Yeah.
No, you're 8 hours ahead. I was going to ask you how many times you've seen the show, because that's what we started off talking about.
Well, I've seen it twice all the way through, but I've watched a couple of parts a few more times, but only twice the entire thing.
Only twice? Wow.
Yeah. Some of my favourite scenes I've watched a few times. Like there's a few segments that I just really love that I've just watched like the odd 15-minute part here and there. Yeah.
I can totally relate to that on every level.
Yeah.
I've watched Irvar's death scene about 200 times.
Whoa.
Literally, it is for me. It is like one of the best moments of the series on every level. Pemberton's music is just so emotional. Man. It's beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
Oh, it is. It's lovely. I think the one I've watched the most is, I think it's episode 5, maybe. It's sort of the last 20 minutes. So basically, from when that big dream fast happens with everyone, I love that segment where tension building that to ending up with Dawn Waldron being killed. I just think it's such a thrilling moment. I love that bit.
Yeah, it really is when the show really becomes. I mean, there's obviously some really serious moments, but now after episode 5, like everything is in peril. Yeah. Everyone is in doubt.
It all kicks off at that moment, doesn't it? I love that. I just love that mounting dread that happens in that.
For sure.
I watched that the other day. Actually, I just love how it absolutely just sums up how manipulative the Skeksis can be. Like like the madness. They've literally just killed her mum, and somehow it's not their fault.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they totally you've been through a terrible ordeal. Shall we deal with the prisoners for you? And Celadon's like, yeah, you deal with them. Yeah, it's not, yeah. It's just like, Skekzok and Skekvar are just totally brilliant. It's excellent. It's excellent drama. It's excellent drama.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what? One scene in the same, I think it might have been the episode before, or maybe the same episode, where the Scroll Keeper, the Ritual Master, they're looking at the different volunteers, and he goes, "Look at this one. It's just creepy. It is creepy. Like, do you just want to eat him? What do you want to do to this Gelfling? Like, it's kind of has that like creepy sexual like
predator.
Yeah,
like his tongue's coming out of his mouth. It's like, oh man, this is rank.
It's really great. I think that's the same episode. I love that. So cool.
It's again that devoid of all humanity, isn't it?
Mm-hmm,
it's just totally monstrous. And the fact
they just see them as insects, don't they? Well, they say that later on, obviously. Chamberlain says that later on. Just the fact that they just see them as complete lesser creatures than them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One thing I think is really interesting that, like in the beginning, and you see the Scroll Keeper, and then you see the Collector. They're together in the carriage, and they're going to Harar, and his interactions with. Or when they're talking about like, and the Scroll Keeper is like, well, I love the Gelfling capital. I really genuinely like that character. I'm like, hey, I like him. Like he seems like he's got a tender side to him. And he wants Brea to get into the carriage with him, and they're talking, and they have some mutual interest there. And it's interesting that they were able to create a character, and I want to say humanity, but let's just say a moral compass. Like we get to know Skeksis in a way we're like, hey, he's kind of cool, you know?
Yeah. I agree with. Yeah, it's almost. Yeah, it's weird because I saw that first episode at the cinema, and I was sitting there, and I was like, this is weird. I know what he is. I know what his end game is. Mm-hmm. I know what he's going to do to them. And yet I'm like, maybe he's not going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I think it also shows how that's the greatness of the Scroll Keeper. It's all a facade.
Mm-hmm.
It's all false. He's just an extremely good liar.
Do you think it is though? Yeah. Or is it maybe until they start drinking the essence, then it pushes them into this sort of animalistic, primal?
I think it's that it's the essence drinking is just a nudge. I think that primal. You have to remember as well is after the split, the longer that they are apart from the Uru or the mystics, the closer they get to their polar opposite. So if the mystics are all good, then obviously the Skeksis are all bad. But it's slowly, the longer they are apart, they are gradually moving towards that destination, whether they like it or not.
So they're descending, sort of, without.
They are, without a doubt. So the fact that they start to drink essence it just accelerates that path.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, and the reason I think that is because you literally cut to 10 minutes later, and the Scroll Keeper is in the hall with in the Gelfling capital, and Breya hugs the Scroll Keeper, and his head snaps to look at her, but it's not done in a subtle way. It's an aggressive movement, as if to say, "Don't touch me," and then he realizes where he is, composes himself, and then says, "Yeah, run along." And then when she turns her back, he like wipes his robe. So as if to say, she's touched me, like this is disgusting. But and I think that just amplifies this thought that he's always putting on an act, that he's clever enough to know that where he is and who's watching.
Yeah, that's
interesting.
And not that idea that he actually likes her.
Maybe he doesn't like her. Maybe he's just intrigued by the peasants. Because even the Skektek... Skektek...
I could see them looking at like silly little sort of pets, kind of just amusements.
Yeah. And I feel like with Skektek, there was a point where, I don't know if it was Skekso or another Skeksis was going to take one of those creatures out of the cage and kill it or eat it or whatever. And Skektek is like... walks over to the cage a little bit after that and calms the little animal down, and he has this tenderness to him that he has some compassion for what's in the cage. And I thought it was really just a great moment to, for lack of better words, humanize the character, to show that yes, they are consumed by the demons of our nature, but there's also some glimmers of goodness in them too, which makes them more fascinating.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I agree with that, because if they were just solely evil from the get-go, you'd end up with it's okay for the hour and a half that you see them in the movie, because they are the villains of the piece, so you know that they are the bad guy, and that's, they have to be defeated. Mm-hmm. But when you've got 10 hours of television, you could argue that they might also be. You might get bored of that. Mm-hmm. So I agree with what you're saying. They do it in a way that keeps you constantly guessing, which is excellent.
Yes.
Are they actually as evil as I think they are, or is there a hope for them?
Because it would be boring if they were just straight up everything they did was bad. Because I think the best characters we are guessing. We're like, well, what's this really about? What's Skeksil up to? What are all these characters up to? And if we just knew, like, they're horrible, awful, I feel like we could just kind of write them off, which I think might be interesting if we get a season 2 and they introduce the mystics. Maybe they're so far into their pendulum swing of their quiet and peacefulness that they're apathetic. They don't want to do anything. And maybe the Gelflings are like, come on, do something, help us. And they're like, no, you're just about peace.
Yeah, it's that inaction. I mean, even like Brian Froud talks about it in The World of the Dark Crystal, that to rise up and overthrow is to convey an emotion that would be anger. Like, you're angry at the people, but that is so far from what the mystics can even comprehend. They understand what's happening, but they're almost crippled by their own mythos. That makes sense? Like their ideas about what they should do. They can't actually act because their emotions have crippled them. Mm-hmm. And like you said about the Skeksis as well, they are the reason they're amazing, that they're such a good villain as well, is the fact that they are kind of a victim. The Skeksis are a victim of their own ignorance. They the Urskeks wanted to purify the all that was bad out of them. And then by doing that, they split themselves in half. So you sympathize with both sides, but you're watching them destroy an entire race because of that decision. And I think that's why I really liked, that was really cool to see the Heretic and the Wanderer, that they are not what you expect. They haven't got to that point. By staying together, they've been able to almost resist that urge to go further, like the opposite, like yin and yang. They've kind of balanced themselves by being each other's company.
Yeah.
Which was something new that we hadn't seen, and a great idea, because it was weird because I was never quite sure of how, when I first saw it, I was like, oh, I don't know about that. That seems seems too comical. But
yeah,
the
I
more
thought the same.
He's like, the Heretic has grown on me so much.
Oh yeah,
like he's such a lunatic, and I love him for it.
I found it really jarring at first, but I love him now, definitely. I think it does. I think it does fit. When the first time I watched it, I thought it just does not fit at all, but it does, and I do love it.
Yeah,
I mean, he's only really as crazy as Olga's crazy in the film, so it's like it does fit. Yeah, I love him
totally. And so is Madra Argot. I switched that up. She's a little bit like Aughra too, a little bit funny, a little bit crazy, a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
Like, she reminds me so much of Aughra in her own way. It's very interesting, and their names are similar as well, which I also thought was interesting. Like, there's a connection between the two.
I also got a very female Yoda. Like her humor is very much of that same, just the random laughing. I love her little laugh that she does, but it's so much like Yoda, but not in a sense that it's not to an extent where I just think she's female Yoda. It's I see parts of his characteristics, but fundamentally she's her own character.
She looks more like a lizard too to me. Like, she doesn't look like, there's something about the way she was sculpted that she looks more animal-like to me than any other gelfling. There's something about her neck and her face where she reminds me of a frog or a lizard or a snake or something.
That's because she's an old...
Yeah.
There's a little bit of everyone's grandma in her.
Yeah, there really is.
and I think it's just, her eyes are massive. Like, I know, like, Deet's eyes are big, but I think because Argot's head is quite small, her eyes just look huge. They're like anime eyes.
Yeah, now, they are. Well, she's blind.
Well, did you? Oh, I was going to ask you. I only noticed that she was blind about a few weeks ago on one of my watches. I'm like, oh shit, she's blind. And then you see her, she's kind of tapping, but it wasn't really made that clear. When did you guys realize that?
Yeah, I did realize it. I realized that on the first watch, but
did you?
Wow. Yeah. And I felt something was off, and I couldn't work it out for a little bit, and then I realized what it was. I knew there was something going on.
Huh.
When I went to the screening of the first episode, I can't remember if I spoke about this before, but Louise Gold was there, who puppeteers and voices Mordred Argot. And she told a story about, she's meant to be blind, right? So she comes on set and she starts doing a performance, and apparently Louis was like, well, why is she like, your head movement's off with her? And she's like, well, she's meant to be blind, isn't she? And they'd totally forgotten that she was meant to be blind.
Wow.
So they just went, okay, then carry on. And it kind of like you feel like she starts off blind and then just seems to like tailors off a little bit. So I wonder if they like completely forgot she was blind again later on in the series.
There was also another moment in the series as well where I'm like, did they just forget about? Oh, like, when Brea flies, like she jumps off of the top of the library and she's flying into the castle in Harar, and and you can see her flying over it, and there's no gate in front of it. And then later, when Hupp and Deet approach, there's all of a sudden a gate there.
Yeah. I'd love how it's like inconsistent as well, because like she's like like at the battle in episode 10, she's just flying about, right? There's no need to climb to the top of the highest ridge and glide down. They're just flying about. And yet she needed to go to the highest point in Hurrah to get over this gate.
Yeah, I think they need to explain that a little bit, like, because it seems like, well, like then you have Madra Farah just taking flight within the chamber, so she didn't need to jump off anything.
I think
but then
that shot. I think they wanted that gorgeous shot. I think that's what it was.
Give her a reason to have the shot of Hurrah.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe. But yeah, I think if there was some type of exposition, might be because the flying. Now I was told that the Gelflings just can't fly; they need to be picked up by wind. But what you see is kind of not. It doesn't. Some have to. It seems like Bray has to jump off the highest peak, but others don't.
Well, that's weird because obviously, like, if we're quite close to the film, because in the film, well, at the time of the film, Kira says that they can't fly anymore, but we're actually quite close to it.
Well, Kira doesn't actually say that at all. It's only said in the book. There's no explanation in the movie.
It's in the book. So it's about the blight. Well, we're assuming it's the blight of the Darkening has infected all of and the denizens within it. So it's because, like you said in the book, it's explained that the Gelflings have forgotten how to fly or have lost the use of flight. And also, Kira's wings are different. Kira's kind of look like, I wouldn't say a moth.
They're bigger. They're a little bit bigger.
And they're connected to her lower spine rather than the wings in the series are a bit like a dragonfly's wings.
Yeah. Although each clan seems to have different looking wings. I mean, I haven't seen what the Drenchen wings look like, and I don't know. Maybe
just thinking. I think you can see the Mordras. I think they look quite sort of bat-like from what quite sort of leathery.
Which Mordra?
I think you do. I think you see the Drenchen Mordra's wings.
Really? Oh.
I think so. I think you can see them. From what I remember, I just have this image of them being sort of bat-like, kind of like sort of more skin type wings. But I'm not sure.
Like
maybe I'm imagining that. Yeah, a bit more sort of like bats, kind of like like skin. Not quite like Kira's. I think they were more kind of, I don't know, like webbing, sort of webby wings. Yeah. Or maybe I'm just imagining.
I would imagine there's a lot of details for them too. I mean, the amount of details, like and they have people usually on set who are making sure, okay, the scene just looked like this, or this is what's going on in the script. But there's so many details happening. I think it's just probably a normal thing for maybe some of those details to be forgotten.
I mean, like watching this show, there's so many little details that I've missed. Like I totally missed that Gurjin is a prince, right? So Gurjin's sister is Naya, who is princess and daughter of Mordra Lycid, who is the Drenchen Mordra. So that makes Gurjin prince, right? And and it's a passing comment to Naya in I think it's the scene with Rian in the Podling hut, and I totally missed that altogether in the series.
But I don't think they have princes though. I think they only have princesses. I think. I don't know because it's totally matriarchal, isn't it? I think they just ignore it.
Yeah, but even so, I didn't realise. Okay, even with that, I didn't realise that makes Naya Princess Naya.
Is
Yeah,
she ever referred to as Princess Naya in the show?
I think it's a passing comment from Tavra to when they've got Rian at knife point in the Podling village.
Yes.
I think Tavra refers to her as Princess Naya.
Okay.
think. Don't quote me.
Interesting. Well, that was also another interesting scene because we've been introduced to Tavra, and she's very level-headed and well-spoken and just even. And then I feel like when she gets into the Podling Village and she's confronting Rian, she's different character. She's kind of like insightful and shouting and screaming. And I was like, well, maybe she's just different with her family than she is with other people. I don't know. I just thought it was interesting.
Yeah, I loved that. I was like, because at first I was a bit like, Tavra, she's kind of getting left to the side here. She's just coming across as like a bit of a peacekeeper between her sisters. And then literally you get into that Podling village, and she's like, don't touch him, you dirty.
Probably because she's a warrior. She's a fighter.
Yeah. Suddenly she's like, literally, this. If you touch him again, we're literally going to go here. Like, game on.
Yeah.
Like, joke. But yeah, it was nice to see that side, and I think that's something that they did really well with the series, was that every time I thought I understood a character, they did something I didn't expect. Mm-hmm. Even the characters that I know and love from the film, they kind of mixed it up and added aspects to them that I would have been, if it had been written down, I'd have been kind of like, oh, I don't know about that. But to see it, I mean, like, just take the Emperor, right? We know him as the guy who literally crumbles into dust. So they could literally have done anything with him, but he's so. Even though he has the title of Emperor, I just kind of was like, oh, he's the Emperor of the Skeksis. What does that even mean? But he's like, you feel the fear that the other Skeksis have of him. Like, from that opening scene, like, straight away, he's like, all he has is his hand on the scientist, and yet Skek Tech is literally like bricking it. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, it's just they just conveyed those little nuances and aspects to the characters so well.
Yeah. One thing I you sort of mentioned it, but not that I want to take this into a direction where we're talking about other series or sequels or whatever, but I will always appreciate and admire that we have a story for, not that we just have 10 hours of Dark Crystal, but we have a story where we have new characters doing new things. And we live in an era where everything is being rebooted or remade, or there's a sequel, there's a prequel. And like, for instance, I just watched Terminator Dark Fate. And I was maybe hoping that, hey, I could maybe love this. Maybe it's great. I remember seeing one of the trailers.
Spoiler.
No spoilers? Okay, well, I won't spoil I won't spoil it, but I'm gonna talk.
Rob has left the chat.
I'm gonna talk in generalities. And what I love about AOR is that you have new characters in a familiar setting with doing completely different things. And I really think in order to do that, you have to be able to take a risk. You have to be able to believe in the material. And you usually have to have writers who have had this world sort of living in their hearts and in their minds for a long time with the story to tell. Usually the best films come from writers and storytellers and directors who have had a burning heart to tell a story in a world that they've always held dear. And whether it's Star Wars or Terminator, as I've really thought about sequels, I've been thinking about sequels and prequels for quite a few weeks now, just why they fail, why so many of them fail. And in large part is because you have new characters doing old things, not telling us anything new, not explaining it, not furthering the story or further expanding a story that we're familiar with. And the AOR is new characters doing new things, expanding a story that we know in ways that we could never have possibly imagined. And it's just brilliant. And I wish, and this is why this show is so successful, because unlike, like, for instance, you guys know I have an Alien podcast. Oftentimes when sequels are made, you have a studio who's like, oh, we should probably make a sequel. Why don't you hire this writer? Oh, okay. Hey, so-and-so, would you be interested in writing a sequel or a prequel to this series? Oh, sure, I can work on it. So they write they get up to speed on something that they know, and they write a sequel. And most of the time, it's the same tropes that we've already seen in a little bit of a different setting, but mostly it's the same things that we've seen again, repackaged in a different way. And AOR at every point is not that, and that is amazing.
Yeah. I totally agree. Totally agree. Like, also, the reason the sequels and this sort of like happens is because it's easy money. Like you take a franchise that's already made loads of money, or it's successful, and then they just take that again, repackage it, and then they go again, and it makes the same money because you're expecting to see something different, but it's not, and it keeps happening time and time again. With Age of Resistance, right? They had such a sandbox to play in. There was so much material, and so many things we didn't know. Like, we didn't know how many clans of Gelfling there were. That was just, they came. The writers have to take credit where credit's due. I mean, it's just the level of detail. I mean, they took World of the Dark Crystal, creation myths as a sort of base point, but even those books do have, what's the word? It's only really a guide, like, to the level that these guys have took that material and ran with it. I mean, you can't, like, none of the dialogue was written between the Skeksis, none of that. The whole thing with Celadon and the Skeksis, essentially betraying her and tearing her down, and that is absolute television gold. And that was just out of these writers' mind. And I mean, those guys. I mean, what's the? You have to remind me their names, Jamie. It's Aldous and
Will Matthews and Jeffrey Addis.
That's it, Addis. Sorry,
and
my
then
apologies.
Of course you have Javier Grillo, Mark Sock. I don't know how you pronounce his last name. Then you have Vivian Lee, Durkin.
Yeah.
And you have
J.M.
Lee, and a couple others as well.
I mean, you can just tell that they just understood what they were writing. I mean, like Addis and that were going to do a Labyrinth sequel originally. That's what they were coming in to do. I mean, I would sit down and watch that movie. Even though that's a sequel, if they can pour the same love and emotion into the characters from the Labyrinth, even though Bowie's gone, I would sit and watch that movie. Because it shows a complete understanding of the source material. This isn't sort of like just taking characters that and just sort of adding a little bit but telling the same story. They have completely shaped this world, much like how they did on the original Dark Crystal.
Because the Dark Crystal is not, the fan base is pretty small. It was pretty small, really, and there was no expectations, which is quite good. So it wasn't a sense of, we've got to please, these fans that love this first film, because it happened, obviously, it was a long time ago, and people, they were more going for sort of a new audience, really, which is quite good. So they didn't really feel that they had to recreate any moments or do any fan pleasing moments, which was great because it just opened it up so much to them. I think that probably made quite a difference, that it was so far in the past and they didn't have to think about kind of, let's redo that scene, recreate that scene. Everyone loved that. Let's redo that again. So it was, I think it was, that probably really helped them a lot, that they can just do whatever they wanted, really.
And I think
it works.
It shows it also highlights why the story for Power of the Dark Crystal is so bad, because you had people like, oh, hey, we need a sequel. Let's get those writers in there and let's see if they can write a sequel. So they're like, oh, okay. Well, let's have these new characters, a boy and a girl, and they have to save their world as well. And let's have them crack the crystal, and let's have Jen turn into a Skeksis, essentially, like with his personality, and let's run with that. And it was just a retelling. Maybe so they're underground. It's a little bit of a different setting, but it's easy, like you said, James. It's easy to just go into something that you're not that passionate about, or that you're not that interested in, or you don't have a lot of ideas for, and just sort of recreates things that we've gone before. And like you said, Rob, like, oh, hey, people seem to love that. Let's put that in there. And this is why, and I think this is really what Hollywood streaming services or whoever needs to hear, is the best storytellers, the best people you want to write a story in an existing world are the people who have been dying to tell a story all of their lives, whether they're new writers or up and coming writers. Someone who's like, we have a story to tell, we have a story to tell, as opposed to how the system works. Well, let's just make a sequel, and you can tell.
Let's get the hot
yeah,
new director.
Yeah.
Get them.
Yeah, and you can tell the people who understand fundamentally what a news story is, and the people who are just sort of like, oh well, here we are, here it is, And and also even sometimes people who maybe they love something but they don't know why they love it. But like even for instance with AOR, they could have thrown in the Wall of Destiny. They could have put all that in there. You had 10 hours. They had a lot of time to do quite a bit. They didn't do it because they knew that there's a lot of story here and we need to be careful and we need to take our time. And I mean, again, we don't know if we're going to get a season 2. Hopefully we do. But
I mean, think about what you haven't seen.
Yeah.
I mean, think what you haven't seen. You've not seen Crystal Bats. You've seen one Garthim. Like, that is like, when you think of Dark Crystal, that imagery comes straight away. I mean, you've not even seen the Garthim Master. I mean, you've not seen it. You've seen one mystic. Oh, okay, sorry, 2 mystics. Like, there is so much you haven't seen. And that was the strength of the creative team put together. They were so confident in what they were creating that
and they really held back.
Yeah,
in a great way. They could have just thrown it all in there. It's so nicely done.
They were just allowed to create something new within the world that had already been established. And going back to Power of the Dark Crystal, I mean, it's so difficult to talk about because you get so passionate. But for me, they broke Rule 101, which is do not, under any circumstance, retcon the end of the original, right? So I literally was like, I'm just going to go in, because obviously for so long it was in limbo, and I was looking at every page of back then, like, internet was hardly anything, but it was like back, through every Empire magazine, any news of the Dark Crystal sequel, and then it failed flat, and then it became this comic, and I thought, I'll buy the comic. I thought, right, I'll give the first issue a go and just see what the story is. Don't go in there all hot-headed. Oh, they've ruined this and that. Just read it. And I open issue 1, and the crystal splits, and for some reason, the Skeksis and the Mystics appeared,
which makes no sense.
And I'm like, but
they aren't connected.
It wasn't the cracking of the crystal. Yeah, it wasn't the cracking of the crystal that made them split. It was their own scientific experiments, and then one of the Skeksis broke off a shard. But they just ignored that and just went, "Oh, we've cracked the crystal, and here they are. Here's your favourite villain of all time, for no reason, no explanation. They're just here." And I was like,
and then they turned Jen into a villain. Like,
yeah,
really?
I'm just like, no. Like every fibre of your body just goes, no, I don't accept this. And and you can't help but feel that, because it doesn't feel right. It felt like a cash cow. It felt like a cash cow. And I was like, this is why Power has struggled, because there is the end of Dark Crystal ends in such a way that they cannot tell a new story without treading new ground, unless the villains of the new film are not the Skeksis and the Mystics.
Yeah,
and that they have to go different again. It has to be something new within the world that they've already built.
Where have these new rumours come from that I've seen like the last sort of week that they're thinking of going ahead with this again? Is this just
a quote? It's a quote from Lisa Henson, I believe. But I think her quote is, she's talking about the idea of maybe a sequel, but not necessarily Power of the Dark Crystal. I think the assumption was, so she's talking about Power, and maybe she even says it by name. But she also went on record saying the script was not right for that movie.
Why is she talking about sequel though when we want to know about?
Yeah.
To be honest with you,
we have no news of season 2, and they're talking about Power of the Dark Crystal.
It's
like,
bizarre.
Just let it go.
Yeah.
If
They need to leave it alone.
If they think there's demand for a sequel, why on earth do they not think there's demand for a season 2? It's really confusing.
Yeah. Well, I think that if they're smart, they'll let, like, for instance, I don't know if you guys have seen the HBO Watchmen series. It's brilliant if you haven't seen it. But Damon Lindelof, who has redeemed himself in my eyes after the shit show that is Prometheus, he walked away. He said, I've told the story that I've wanted to tell. He said, if HBO wants to do a sequel series, a sequel season, that's fine. He said, but I've told the story I want to tell. And HBO has said, we're done.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's what you do. That's what you do. You don't continue to mind.
Sorry, go on.
No, go. I was just going to say, you have to know when to stop. I think after a season 2, if it's 8 to 10 episodes, and they wrap up, that's it. Dark Crystal is done. We'll have maybe almost 20 hours or a little bit more with the movie of Dark Crystal and the books and everything. That's enough. Tell a Labyrinth story. Tell Fraggle Rock. Come up with a new story. Do something different.
I wouldn't mind the new story on Thra, like maybe centuries later, but not related to mythology, possibly.
You know, I always think this is a missed opportunity, and I think it was something that they could have done in Star Wars. Is that I'm quite happy for them to lay the groundwork for new villains in Age of Resistance. It can be a passing comment, or it can be a passing, sort of like on a mural or something like that, or lay these foundations. So if they want to do power and pick a new, you could have a rogue clan of Gelfling that decide that the crystal should be split. I'm just literally just whatever. But as long as it feels natural and it feels like it comes from somewhere, then I don't see the problem with that. We've already discussed in our group, like, you could argue that because they've now created so many Gelfling, that not all the Gelfling are actually wiped out when the time of the film comes about. So Jen and Kira are technically not the last surviving Gelfling. But if you laid that foundation in Age of Resistance,
which
it would feel more natural. You'd accept it more.
Yeah.
But to just sort of like this idea that you can crowbar characters in that you know and love, but you'll just accept it with no backstory and no logic. It just makes zero sense on every level.
And that gets back to, I think, having respect for your audience, respect for the intelligence of your audience, respect that the audience is paying attention. And I think that's why, obviously I don't want to talk, go in about Star Wars, but I think a lot of the issues that people have with Star Wars is they feel like you're insulting my intelligence with this. This isn't well thought out. Some of this doesn't make sense. Not just Star Wars, but then you have whether it's Terminator or it's other shows where it's like, haven't we seen this before? Hasn't this? I mean, even with me in the Alien series, like, this has been done before. I've seen it. You're repackaging something. I've seen it, and you're doing it like Ridley Scott directed 3 Alien films where each of the crew goes into a derelict, finds something, and all hell breaks loose. That's the essential story. He's done it 3 times. How many different ways you can tell the same story? And I think, again, that's why Age of Resistance is such a miracle. It shouldn't exist, and the fact that really the reality is the audience was, fingers crossed they give us a season 2. But if you look at, like I've been looking at, for instance, the official page for the Dark Crystal, which is of course run by the Henson Company, they've always been at about 500,000 people, and they've been at about 500,000 something people for a long, long, long time. And I was thinking with Age of Resistance, with Netflix involved, all the promotion, it might skyrocket to 1 million or so. It hasn't. It's still about 500 and something thousand people, which tells me the audience for this is still very small. It's bigger. It's made its money, but I could have told you this 5 years ago, 6 years ago, that it's always a risk to tell these stories because a lot of people just don't dig on puppets. They look at them, they're like, yeah, well, what am I supposed to feel about this thing? We're different. A lot of us are different. You know, there's 12,000 people in the the Dark Crystal, the Crystal Shard group that feel different, that we connect with the puppets, we connect with elements. But I don't think the general audiences, I think if Age of Resistance was somehow a movie and they released it in theaters, it still wouldn't have done very well because a lot of people, it's not the Muppets where they're comical and they're sort of a version of ourselves, but Age of Resistance or Dark Crystal is very, very serious, and not a lot of people take serious puppets seriously. So it's always going to be a gamble. It's always going to be a gamble. I could have told Netflix and Henson this a long time ago. It doesn't matter how much you promote this, how excited you are, how good it is. It's not going to explode onto the scene the way something like Star Wars would, or The Matrix, or Lord of the Rings, or whatever. It doesn't have that kind of potential. It's too much of a niche.
I know one person apart from you that watched it. That's it. Only one person that I know apart from us lot actually watched it. It's just crazy.
Yeah, I mean, a few of my mates, I said to, you need to watch, and they, you're not going on about Dark Crystal again, are you? I'm like, yeah, you've got to watch it. And my mate genuinely sat down and watched it, and he was like, honestly, he said that was brilliant, and he said that was more satisfying than the 8 seasons of Game of Thrones that he'd watched. And I said, and he was totally astounded. And it's so hard to, and like you say, because they're done with puppets, it's so hard to convince people that they will enjoy it. Like some people just like, they look at it and they're just like, yeah, but it's just going to be Kermit the Frog. And it's like, it's not Kermit the Frog. It's more, and like we were going back, we were saying just before we started this, like people, I look on like Instagram or Twitter, and everyone's like raving about Baby Yoda. And I'm like, that is literally the most basic puppet ever made. It's nothing compared to what has been made with a Dark Crystal, and yet people rave about it because it's Star Wars, and it's always been that way, and it's always a double-edged sword because I love it because not everybody's into it. I love it because it doesn't have this massive audience, and that audience doesn't necessarily influence the material, because sometimes I think what happens with Star Wars is that the audience is so big that if enough people start shouting about it online, then it then gets tailored into something that group of fans wants to see, and not necessarily a new material. But on the other side of that is that we possibly we might not get a season 2 because not enough people have watched it. However, we as fans of the show are 100% the single luckiest fans in any fan base. There are not many fan bases that get a prequel of this quality where everybody loves it. I don't know anybody who's a Dark Crystal fan who hates the series.
Yeah, I don't know anybody either.
That is without doubt a testament to how amazing it is.
Yeah, I mean, I know some like online trolls who are part of other Dark Crystal groups who just every chance they just nitpick it, and they insult the people who are involved in it, and they sort of bask in that like they're cool because they're cool because they don't like it, or they're whatever. But that's like 3 people maybe, you know.
Yeah, and they're just jealous because they're not involved.
They weren't involved. Yeah, and I think.
Go ahead.
Go on. Sorry, no, go on, Jaime. What were you gonna say?
No, I just was gonna ask you guys what do you think about a season 2. Like, obviously, it's what is it? It's over 5 months, and that's a long time to be quiet, you know. And I think we're kind of used to this as Dark Crystal fans, sort of the ongoing silence. What's going to happen? And you're right. Like, you're right. We are lucky to have gotten what we got for sure, but we're also in the this time of expectation for a season 2. So it's natural that we're going to be like, well, what's happening with this show? Is it getting a season 2? Is it not? And I think people just kind of want to know one way or the other. I do. I certainly do. Like, I don't want to be like 3 months later, we still don't know. Like, come on.
Yeah. I just, even if this takes 10 years to give me a second season, I will wait those 10 years. I will literally, when it comes out, I will literally be sat there waiting to binge watch it all again like I did on this one. Like, if it's the same level of that and it's the same quality, I will be waiting, like, without a doubt. But just announce whether or not it is happening or not.
Yes.
Because I don't care. Yeah. It doesn't matter if and in that way, I don't know. I just feel like we're in limbo. I feel like we can't.
Yeah.
Again.
I go and for me personally, I go and see like some of the puppeteers and stuff, and then meet them, and like I feel like I ask the same questions like all the time. Oh, have you heard anything? Or are you so amazing? I really hope you get a second series. And I want those group of people to get the recognition they deserve and an opportunity to finish the story that they've started. That's what I want.
Yeah.
And I think they deserve it.
Yeah.
I think they totally deserve it.
And the way the show ends too, like it's not an ending. It just stopped. And I think they are owed.
Clearly.
And they are also, I feel like they're owed at least, okay, say they don't want to spend some of the $17 billion that they're investing in new content this year for a full 10 episodes. Give them a movie. They can wrap it up in a movie. Totally. Like maybe a good 3-hour film.
No, I don't agree with that, Jeff.
That's what I
really?
I need 10 episodes. I need 10 episodes. I've seen Gartham killing Gelfling. That's all I want. 10
you
sicko.
Just
continuous mayhem.
We've got to take what we can get.
With nice Chianti and fava beats.
Yeah.
I will take a 10-minute short. I'll take anything we can get. I'll have it. I think maybe like 3 films would be good. Like maybe like a year apart, because you like it's just a little trilogy. That'd be quite good.
I don't care how long we wait either. I just want to know one way or the other. But I also have an idea that, and I think me and James were talking about this earlier. Maybe I was talking about it in our little nerds group. But I like the idea if they get a next season that they turn the original film into an episode. So one of the episodes in season 2 is the original film, and then you have an episode after it, and they complete the story.
They did that in Bates Motel, which
really
was quite a good. Yeah, in the final series, I think it's like sort of the third to last episode is Psycho.
Really,
which is quite.
Although that's set in the 60s, and the one Bates Motel, wasn't it a recent film?
It was. It's set modern day, but they just basically did the storyline of Psycho in one episode.
Oh, I see. So they recreated the movie. Got it.
Yeah,
wow.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really good. That would be cool. That would be really cool.
Because I keep flip flopping on this. Like 1 minute I'm like, oh, I want to see Jen and Kira. I want to see them, and then I'm like, oh, but I actually wouldn't mind it if the second series ended at the point of Jen and Kira's flashbacks. You know, like when they first dream fast, and it goes, and they sort of like you see them growing up a little bit. It's like their first, say from the ages 2 to 6. I'd be happy. Like, you know, like the last thing he's like, oh, I'm having a bath, and then he's like learning to read and write. You know, I don't actually scrap that. I'd quite happily just see the Mystics save Jen. Like to see the Mystics pick him up as a bundle. That is all like that. Literally, that can just be like the time, like a 30-second part, just to see that recreated. Because then that's then connected to the original movie. You know what I mean?
Here's the problem, though. Here's the problem. How I feel like they're going to have to go like to the end of the story in some way, because now we have these characters like Brea, Rian, Deet. Those are the main, and of course Hup and Aughra. What is their ending going to be? Do they die? Okay, if they kill them off, all right, there's their ending. I don't think they're going to do that with all of them. I think a couple of them might die. So then how do they end? And we're going to need to see Jen and Kira repopulating Thra. They're going to need to be brought in so we can have an end to their story. And I don't know if ending the film with the rescue of Jen and Kira, unless they have already, unless they're whisked away by the sea fan on the sea, which is possible, I guess. There needs to be an explanation as to what happens to them. Because if there isn't, and that's it, and then we just have the original film, there's storylines that are unresolved. So I feel like they're going to need to bring in the events of the final film and resolve these storylines. Like, where's Deep? Where is Hup? Where's everyone else?
I'd quite like that. I was thinking that and linking to, if they did do a sequel at some point, if they had them cross the sea to another land, and then you could have a sequel then of Gelflings landing in another continent of Thra and exploring that. So I think maybe just an exodus would be good. And it could be a thrilling way to it that they just get it's this race against time to get away, and that's their victory, is that they get to go off and start again somewhere else on Thra.
Yeah,
I think you have to tread really carefully with that, because
it's true.
One of the things that I love about the original movie is the fact that Jen and Kira are the last. Like, I understand what you mean about beyond the movie. It's so difficult, man. Especially with now that they've shown the idea that the Gelfling are children of Thra, and that I mean, does the end of the film says, build,
make your world in its light.
Make your world in its light. Like, do we really need to see the Gelfling repop? I mean,
I agree.
The old is just Jen and Kira.
I agree. I don't think
even that in the comic, there's no explanation how there's all these people, right? All these Gelfling. Like, no wonder Jen and Kira are knackered. Like, if they've repopulated the whole of Thra, he is one busy guy. I mean, Jesus, man.
But we also don't know how children are given to Gelfling. We don't know if females are impregnated or if Thra brings forth Gelfling to couples. We don't know. For instance, Rian's father. What's his name?
Ordon.
What if Rian was just Ordon's desire for a child?
Yeah.
And Thra gave him that child. What if there is no mother? What if some Gelflings have mothers and fathers, others don't? Thra sort of answers that question. We don't know how they're brought into the world of Thra, so that is open. Also, when Jen and Kira meet, Jen says to her, as we all know, I thought I was the only one. And she goes, I thought I was. That right there is an inroad. If they think they're the only ones, they don't know it. You also don't have any mystics saying, yes, you're the last. No one else is saying that. It's just assumed by Jen and Kira that they're the only ones alive. So it would make sense that there are others in hiding. And I think I agree with you, James. I think that we don't need everything resolved. I hate that in sequels. That's why Solo, that's what I find so insulting about Solo, is let's answer this question. Let's answer that question. How did he get his name? Oh, you don't have any people? You must be Solo. It's ridiculous. It's just bad writing. It's lazy writing.
Solo. The reason Han Solo was so cool in Star Wars is because you didn't know. You didn't know. It was just this. It was just, he did the Kessel Run in 12 parsecs. What does that even mean?
Yeah.
Well, I don't care. That's the coolest fucking line I've ever heard.
Yeah.
You don't need to know what that means.
Yeah.
You don't need to know that the Kessel Run is a wormhole or whatever the hell it was.
And the reason why the space jockey is so amazing in Alien is because it's mysterious. And then it's robbed of all its mystery later on.
This day makes me sweat.
Say that again, Rob?
It's just, and I think the space jockey was always kind of my favourite thing about Alien, because it was just the most crazy mystery. Just it was such a sinister, weird thing, and I just never wanted to know what it was, because it's just that was the amazing thing about it. That it was just this ancient, bizarre thing that they just have no idea where it came from. And then we see it's just big bald man.
Yeah,
with white skin.
Yeah.
The fact that you don't know what it is what makes it scary. I still sweat to this day when it comes up to that bit.
Totally, because you don't know what it's going to do.
It's just like, it's the unknown, isn't it? Like, I don't believe that's a bald guy in a suit. Like, that is just creepy.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that... Go ahead, Rob.
With regards to them being seen as the last two Gelfling, I think the one thing that we can think of is that the societies on Thra are kind of like medieval level in a way. So if you think about like a different continent, say in 1400s, people have no idea about people, in America. People in Europe had no idea people in America. So you could look at it in that way, that they're the last two in that known continent.
Yeah.
So there's a whole planet out there that they have no idea what else is out there. So you could look at it that way as well.
Yeah, and I think, like James said, you have to be very careful the way you answer questions and which questions you're going to answer, because I think one glaring maybe question everyone has isn't so much, it's kind of like the Wall of Destiny. It's a very mysterious thing. Where did it come from? How long has it been there? That's a question that you can answer confidently, because we are like, well, what is this? What are those characters? Who are the bearded winged Gelfling? Like, all of those interesting characters on the wall speak to us, and I think that's a mystery that deserves some answering in some way. But I don't think everything needs to be answered, but I also think they're going to have to figure out, so if they don't kill off Deet and Brienne and Rianne and Brea and Hupp and some others, what happens to them, and how do we resolve that with Jen and Kira? But I really think they could make the Dark Crystal, the mythology of the Dark Crystal, beginning to end, and end it with a season 2, incorporating the original film, and that's it. And I think that they could do it. I really think they could. I think they just need to be careful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Also, though, it seems that for a long time, like, you have to remember as well, is like Jim Henson Company have only 2 properties now. They have Labyrinth and Dark Crystal. So their ideas of, essentially making money is they want this to be as profitable and as successful as possible. So the idea, we sit here saying, I'd love a season 2, and that it would be cool if they wrapped it up all, so it's all consistent with the story. But I think there is other thoughts at hand, that they want this to continue past the movie. The fact that the rumors have started to come out already that they want to go back to power, it says that is the agenda, that they want to somehow move this on and keep telling stories. I mean, the fact that you had, in terms of comic, you had Power, Beneath, and there was another one as well that I can't even remember. And the reason they didn't take off is because it lacks that story and it lacks that depth that I think that Age of Resistance has. I mean, like, the Age of Resistance comics are just as good as the story that you see on screen. So I think that with Dark Crystal, the way forward is not past the movie; it's always before. There was even with Age of Resistance, they've gone before the movie. You could go even further before that. We've not actually seen physically on screen the Urskeks arrive on Thra. I would happily watch that if they wanted to do a story about the Urskeks' homeworld and how they get to Thra. I would happily watch that. Like, going forward is not past the movie. Going forward is before it, way before it.
I would agree. I agree.
I just worry that they're so obsessed with power that is.
I think they're just latching on to that because they're worried it's looking like Netflix might not do a season 2. So I think they're just sort of panicking and being like, well, let's talk about power, because then maybe someone else will work with them on that. My
concern with that is, I guess it depends on who is involved in Power, but that means they're going to have to get funding from someone else, which means they might not be able to make Power the way they made AOR, which means it'll be a lot of digital, like a lot of like fully digital characters. I mean, there was little tiny bits of that in AOR, but they were just augmentation, and they were like, but 85% of what we're seeing is all practical. Even the most craziest things, even some of the papers flying around Brea were practical papers. I would be concerned that even if they rewrote Power and it's a different story, I would be concerned that they wouldn't have the money to make a film the way Netflix was able to fund Age of Resistance. So it's going to look like, oh well, yeah, that's fake. I mean, we all saw that digital Gelfling in that documentary, and just how shitty all that looked together. It looked like
awful. It is absolutely awful.
Yeah,
it doesn't even look like a Gelfling.
Yeah,
looks like Rapunzel. It's horrific.
I tell you what it looked like. It looked like Elsa from Frozen.
Exactly. It looked like a Disney princess.
Well, and the terrible thing about it isn't that the character was like, she was a fine character for some other story in some other world, whatever. It wasn't photoreal, and you have this photoreal Skeksis chasing this very cartoony, like
it was like
Gelfling version of Elsa. So it's like, but my fear is the wrong decisions will be made, and we'll have a Dark Crystal series with some practical, but these digital characters that don't feel real, that are not there in the space, and we're like, well, at least we have Age of Resistance, that'll just sort of sully the name. Not that, but it would just Will Matthews and Jeffrey Addis would have to be involved. I feel like Louis would have to be involved. The right team would have to be involved, so that people are telling a story that needs to be told, and not a story they're just searching to be told. Like, well, what, like Beneath the Dark Crystal is just a terrible story. It's terrible. It's awful. And even the drawings are like the way they draw like Gelfling houses. They just look like houses on a street somewhere in America. Like, no thought is given to that. It's terrible.
I mean, the weird thing as well with like Louis was attached to Power of the Dark Crystal.
Yes, he
was. That's how long he's been attached. I mean, he's been attached for like ages. Like, I can't even imagine them doing it without him. I would happily. The team that they put together for Age of Resistance, that team needs to come back. Like, don't care if we have to wait 5-10 years for them to for all their planners to like all come together, for the Great Conjunction to come together. I will literally wait for that team to come back together. That team is the reason that this is such of good quality. And why would you even consider anybody else when it's
100%? 100%.
It's just ridiculous.
Yep. My suspicion is that with the 40th anniversary in 2 years, essentially, they're going to wait. They have some time. They have a window. So people are doing other things. They'll announce it. So by the time they announce it, it'll feel like the show's only about 18 months away as opposed to 2 years. That's just me thinking, oh, this is what they're thinking. I don't know if they have a plan. I would imagine Netflix is a huge conglomerate, and they have offices and studios all over the world. They know what they're doing for sure. Like, I would think that's the plan.
Just tell people. Like, literally make a statement.
Yeah.
Like, it's so gut wrenching, especially when you see like stuff like The Witcher gets like an immediate like announcement. Oh, season 2's on the way, by the way. Don't wait.
Before season 1 even came out. Yep.
It's like, what the hell are you doing?
And then you have like Sabrina, which they filmed season 1 and season 2 together, and then they announced a season 3. All of this happened before Age of Resistance came out, and Sabrina, the first season was pretty good, but the rest of it's just not good at all. It's not even like tracking as like some of the top viewed whatever. It's popular, but I don't even ever see it trending, and it gets season. And maybe it's just cheaper to make, so they don't care. And I know Dark Crystal is expensive, but another good thing is all of the puppets, all of the sets, all of everything is still in those studios that Netflix owns or is renting out for like 5 years. So all of that stuff is still there. If they were going to cancel it, we would know. I think. I don't think that they would make us wait that long. If they cancel it,
I have money waiting for when it all hits Prop Store.
Oh yeah.
You're gonna be after Bray, right? Yeah. You're
I don't
gonna
know if
be
the Henson
bidding on
Company.
Bray.
I don't know if the Henson Company will let those main puppets go.
I will own Hup's hat
James,
or his
yeah.
spoon. I swear to God. But yeah, I know what you mean. It just seems weird that they're kind of just sitting on it. I don't get it. I mean, it just, I don't know. You just feel down. I don't know why I feel. I think because
Yes.
like I said earlier, like we were like, oh, we're so lucky to get the series, and if they don't do any more, but now I've had a taste of what they've offered. It's like, yeah, I want the full meal now. Yeah, I've had my start. I want the full lot. Like, give me my dark crystal cake.
And part of that is the way they set it up. Like if they would have had a logical conclusion for the end of season 1, where it could have been like, oh, if it ends here, that's okay. They didn't end it that way. They ended it on a cliffhanger.
It's such amazing. They say all the stuff that you really want to see. Like, I really want to see the Garthin getting. I just want to see. We're not seeing anything about how we get down to 2 Gelfling. I need to see the Purge. Like,
oh yeah.
Yeah, I just have to see it.
To hear the clickety click again.
Oh yeah. I mean, and there's so much mystery. Like again, like you see Brea running in the forest, who she looks presumably like Kira's mother. You see Rian on the crystal looking like he's trying to restore it. There's a lot of questions there. You see Deet on the throne. Maybe she's so encumbered by the darkening where she runs the Skeksis out, but she's also a tyrant. There's so many different things that they can explore.
Yeah.
But one thing I think was interesting, someone said about the Mystics. Well, if the Mystics could, end Skeksis' terror by just killing themselves, why don't they do that? But that's not how stories happen. That's not how it happens in real life. It's not how it happens in some of the best stories ever written, because people have to fight for what's right. And it's rare that people take the easy way out, which is suicide. The prophecy is in place so that the Gelflings have to save the world.
Season 2, I might take that way out.
Yeah, but also.
If we don't
What'd you say? Oh, you said if we don't get a season 2, that's.
That's my plan.
It's more than that, because if the mystics kill themselves, right? If they all do that, if they all do what Urvar does and they all kill themselves and the Skeksis are killed, that doesn't heal the crystal. That the prophecy doesn't help anything. That means that Jen, who's ordained, or Jen and Kira, who the mystics believe that they are the last, and that it's by Gelfling hand or by none. If they do not pass that message on, then Thrall will just slowly die. Like, it will just continue to die. It solves nothing, but it's kind of like they're also crippled by their. Again, it goes back to the thing where they're crippled by their inaction. For the mystics to be the savior, because they're so far the polar opposite, they couldn't physically hurt anybody, let alone themselves. And so they're almost crippled by their emotions.
I would agree, and I think that if they approach the mystics correctly, or in a way that makes sense, the mystics are also going to struggle with their own demons or their own imperfections, where they're so passive that it's almost like it's where they could do more, but they don't, because they don't do anything, and it makes the Gelflings mad, thinking maybe the Gelflings are running and they're trying to find solace, and they run to the Valley of the Mystics, and the Mystics are like, well, we can't help you. That's not what we're here for.
Wouldn't you just love to see, like, mystics stood on a hill watching, like, the Purge, and Gelfling coming to the mystics like, help us, and the mystics just turn and walk away? Like, that would be amazing.
Yeah, that would be.
Just like, totally. That'd be the antithesis of it. Like they'd be like, you'd hate the mystics for being passive, like, and yet they're totally good. It's just, that would be that'd be so great to see.
Yeah, I had this idea of Deet finding the mystics. Maybe she obviously, it looks like she takes off at the end of Age of Resistance because she feels like she's too much of a freak. But her going to discovering the Mystic Valley, because she has all knowledge of Thra within the Darkening. So she discovers the Mystic Valley, and she hopes that she can be saved, or that they can remove the Darkening from her. And one mystic is like, "Young Deet, I cannot help you." Like this task is for you and you alone. Like saying, you've done a great service, but there's nothing that we can do. You have to live with this. This is what we can maybe help you manage it. We can maybe, I don't know, help talk to you about it, but we can't take it from you. That's not why we're here. That's not why, this is not the role in the story. There's so many good opportunities. Like, I have this idea, or not an idea, but like, so maybe the Gelflings eventually in season 2, they discover the Wall of Destiny and they know what they have to do, but they also find out that maybe because they tried, that they can't heal the crystal until a Great Conjunction, and they realize a lot of them will be very, very old, or they fear that they're going to be dead by the time another Great Conjunction happens. So they're angry, like, how do we have all of this information and how to save our world?
And yet we can't do it.
We can't do it. Oh my! And so maybe like then you have people like Breet. Dave, that's a new name, Breet. You have people like Brea who are she's so book smart, and she wants to learn, just furious, almost maybe giving up the cause, because she's like, well, what if cruel joke is this, where we're given all this knowledge just to do what? To die with it? Like, oh my God, that's such great storytelling potential.
Yeah, it is. It is, definitely.
To see,
it would explain Rian in the vision as well, because maybe he's like, well, I'm just going to try it anyway, just as a last exchange.
Yeah, it'd be cool to. I was just about to say, it'd be cool to see Rian fail, and I know that sounds really bad, but
no, I agree.
To think, oh yeah, I've healed it, and nothing happens.
Yeah.
Like, what now? Like, he's in the Castle of the Crystal. Where do you go now?
Like the so it's like, yes, and then it's like, oh shit, and then
drain it.
Happens. Yeah. Oh yeah. Definitely.
It'll be interesting to see, like, if Rian is Jen's father, like what that transaction is, or what transpires in terms of where they leave Jen. Like, do they leave him close to the Valley of the Mystics?
No.
Or does he get killed?
He mums it. No, I don't. I'm not bothered about that. They don't relate to them.
I agree. I don't, but I think it's sort of set up a little bit. They do not need to answer that question definitively. Leave that a mystery. That is not what these stories are about. The story is about Thra and sort of making Thra whole again. It's not about who are the parents of the final heroes. I think that can be dangerous prequel territory. That's why we don't want someone asking Kira who? Kira Skywalker.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, I think, I like going back to what we were saying about the Mystics as well. I think I like this idea that they're in action. They make a decision that they're not gonna do anything, but something in them changes. And they decide that, why does Ursu pick up Jen? And I think that idea that it comes from, the fact that Jen is a crying baby. He's swaddled, and the vision is, you see Dying Master pick up Jen. And I'd love to have this moment where the Mystics are seeing, like, all the Gelfling dying, and there's all these flames, and he looks down and there's just a crying baby. And something in him he has to pick him up. He can't leave him, even though they've made that decision not to interfere.
Yeah, he makes a choice to interfere. And so he goes against their creed or something. Or the creed of the Mystics, like, no, we don't get involved. What are you doing? We don't get involved.
It's against their emotion. It's against them. They are not physically, but they're emotionally changing all the time. The longer they're away from the Skeksis, the more they change. And the fact that he makes a choice, and I'd like to know that it's his choice, not as a group. him as an individual. He looks down and sees Jen and decides he cannot leave him. He has to. You know what I mean? And I think it'd be really cool to see that. Because then it explains Jen's bond to the Master.
Yeah, because you always get the sense that none of the others have that bond with him at all in the film.
Yeah, and that he, I always love that opening scene in the original movie where Jen says, "Master, don't leave me." I always well up when I see it, because Garlic says it with such conviction, and you feel that he's not just a master; he's like a father figure. It's more than that. There's a connection, and also the fact that Ursu has told him his destiny on his deathbed. He's full of resentment for not telling him sooner.
And they've sheltered him so much. You can see it in his face and the way he sort of enters the world. He's not prepared for it at all. They didn't prepare him for any of this. They just...
ignorant destiny.
Yeah, and this is the fault of the mystics. Like, I think it's, again, really important that when we see the mystics and we see the Mystic Valley, that we see these, yes, gentle creatures, but also very flawed creatures, because nobody's perfect and no being is perfect. Yeah. So the Skeksis and the mystics both have their own flaws.
Mm.
Oh yeah, because if you're completely good, then you need that mixture. Everyone needs to be a mixture of something. You can't just be completely one thing. Definitely.
Except Rey Skywalker, she's only good. Always good. Never makes a bad decision. Rey, Mary Sue Skywalker.
Yeah.
Well, I think we could probably talk for a lot longer, but it's been about an hour and a half, so maybe we should call it a day for now, and then pick up. Maybe, hopefully, we'll hear some news soon. I keep thinking it's going to be soon, and then it's not soon.
Oh, no.
So, what are your predictions? Let's end with this. What do you guys predict?
Yeah.
Renewal or not?
I think renewal. I think one more. I think they're willing to give one more to finish the story. I think they, whether it's 10 hours is another question, but I think they will honor that and finish the story. Personally, what do you think, Rob?
Well, I want one. I want it. I don't think it's going to happen.
Really?
I do. I just got this feeling. Oh.
Yeah, I feel like I'm conflicted. I feel like part of me thinks, yeah, it will happen. But at the same time, I feel like, well, am I lying to myself?
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, I see Netflix just had, like, they gave all these reports for some of the most viewed shows, and Dark Crystal was on one of the most viewed children's shows. And I think, well, hey, that's a good sign. If it's like number 2 from the top of the most viewed children's shows, that's great. That's awesome. But then, like, they're so quiet. But I'm thinking, but they don't ever hesitate to announce cancellations of very beloved shows. So they wouldn't hesitate with this. So why haven't they? What's going on? Why haven't they? So I think yes, but they're not going to give it a full season. They're not going to give it a full 10 episodes. They're going to go cheaper.
So we've got 2 years. 2 years.
2 years.
A yes, and a no. Right. Well, that's good. Well, a yes.
I love your logic.
Just me being miserable. No, it's not happening. I want it to happen. Obviously.
My God. It's difficult, man. Like, it seems more complicated. Like Jaime said, if they had decided this was it and they're not going to do any more, I don't think Netflix would have even hesitated. It'd have been instant. Like, as soon as, like, as a business decision, that would have been done and that'd be it. But the fact that they've waited this long to not have any news, you'd think that something would have leaked. If usually what happens, if it does take a while to come out, usually stuff leaks, someone speaks, and then suddenly their hands forced to tell everybody that it's not happening. But this seems more complicated. It's almost like yeah, we're going to do it, but there's a catch. And whether that's a movie or whether that's a limited series or I don't know, it just seems like they are dragging their heels, and I can't put the finger on it, and it's annoying.
Yeah, I feel like, and this is just speculation because I don't know anything, and I know that a friend of ours, Ander Perez, said that the Spanish language dubbing director for AOR said that there is a season 2 going to happen. I suppose. I mean, from his mouth to God,
That'd be amazing if that was the leak.
Yeah.
Would he have been told? I'm sorry, but I really don't think so.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. But I
Spanish dubbing, that's a first.
Here's what I think, though. I think that there is a massive NDA for these people. I think that everybody knows, and I think, or the right people know, they under no circumstances can tell anyone until Netflix announces it. They cannot leak it. They can't talk about it. That's what I think. I think everybody knows already, and they're just waiting for the timing.
But the stupid thing is, and that's what makes me think no, because I think, well, without obviously we care, but ultimately who cares? It's not like it's, there's not this great fervor out there like, oh my god, are we getting season 2? It's like a handful of us. So if it's like, why would they keep it such a big secret? Because ultimately, in the grand scheme of viewership, no one cares.
Yeah.
So it's like, well,
yeah, do you know what? I always think social media speaks more volumes than anything else, right? When you go on Instagram, there is so much stuff about Dark Crystal. I mean, I was collecting autographs from the original movie before the series dropped, and there was like nothing, right? Okay, apart from you guys on the podcast and a few other names, like there was hardly anything, right? I see so much like fan art, so many original stories, so many new accounts, like sharing like Dark Crystal memes. Like I was just taken aback by it. I was like, wow, I'm now just one voice of many, and there's loads of. I find it so amazing because I get people like messaging me like, oh, I didn't realize there was a movie, and I'm like, what? And they're like, oh yeah, there's a movie, and I was like, oh my god, you don't know the ending. I was like, I don't know if I should even tell you to watch it because you're gonna be heartbroken, and like, all your favorite characters, they don't exist. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's such a weird. I think social media has far bigger sway than any of these reviews now.
Oh, I agree.
Like, and there's loads of people talking about it. I mean, like, I met Simon Pegg at a convention, and like, I was in the queue, and everyone's got sort of like, Shaun of the Dead stuff and Star Trek, and I look around and there's like quite a few people with Dark Crystal, and I'm like, this is so weird. Like, I've spent so long going to conventions getting Dark Crystal stuff signed, and I'm the only guy. And like, I got to his table, and he was like, "Oh yeah, we so need a second series. Keep pressing on, keep show your enthusiasm because we all love doing it." Wow. And everybody involved was exactly the same. Like, I asked him, I said, "Oh, how did you audition?" Like, and he was like, "Mate, I've been doing the Chamberlain whimper since the movie came out. Like, wow. I nailed the audition. It's my favorite role." And this is Simon Pegg, who's done every Star Wars, Star Trek, and you just get that passion coming from everyone involved, and it's just, it goes back to that same old thing. Like, everyone involved absolutely loved making it. All the fans absolutely loved it unanimously. How could you not do another season? It just, I don't know.
Yeah, the amount of praise it's getting. I mean, I know that there's some shows that have been praised that have been canceled, but this show, I've never seen anything where the fans are just uproariously in love with everything. I mean, you're talking 98% of fandom, and like I don't.
The critics.
Yeah, the critics love it too. Like, love it. Like, this is one of the best shows ever released. Like, this is one of the best shows of 2019. Like, Like, this does Jim Henson's legacy. Like, this is like what's happened with AOR. It's not even possible, and it happened. So I feel like Netflix, just for the sake of integrity, should be like, well, let's finish the story. It is expensive.
That's what I'm hoping.
Yeah, that they realize what they have.
They might
and
do
then,
it like as like an indulgence, like an expensive, like, okay, we shouldn't do it, but
Yeah.
you know, it's critically acclaimed, it's lovely. We'll just do it as like a little quirk, and it'll just be sat there for people to discover whenever. That's what I'm hoping. I think that's the only way that will happen. That will just be like, okay, fuck it, let's just. Sorry,
Yeah,
probably
yeah.
can't swear.
no, you're fine.
Oh, good. I think they might just be like, yeah, you know, we'll just do this just to finish it, and then it can just be this gorgeous little gem that just sits there, and people in years to come can discover it, and it'll just, you know, who cares if we lose money, whatever. Fingers crossed.
And the reality is, Netflix is the biggest streaming giant out there. There's a lot of garbage on that show. There's a lot of original content garbage. That gets 3 or 4 seasons because it's popular with tweens that aren't well written, that are just sort of like the same. It seems like there's this median level of like, we're going to make all these shows with people who are 23. And there's tons of those shows, and I just feel like they will never be at this place where they can rival Disney for like really good content, really well made.
Discovered it, and be like, oh wow, what's this? Like, whereas Dark Crystal can be in 20 years' time, someone's like, oh my god, this is beautiful, because it'll age so well as well, because it's no CGI too. It's going to age beautifully.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, friends, I guess we can stop it there, and then we'll come back and talk about it more sometime.
Yeah, definitely, man.
Yeah.
Thanks for inviting us on again. I really appreciate
thanks for coming on. Thanks. I know it's later for you guys.
We
Really
could literally talk another 6 hours about this.
Oh, I know.
But I need to get
There's so much to talk about. Rob,
Good to speak to you both again.
You too. We'll talk to you guys soon.